to introduce David Friedman, the president of VividGro. It's a leader in the ag tech space, providing hardware and software to the indoor agriculture and industry. VividGro is a division of Lighting Science Group Corporation, a leader in advanced applications of LED technology. Friedman is also the founder of the Panther Funds, which have invested over $5 million in 20 cannabis companies. David, take it away.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon, or I guess good morning. I guess I'm in that span there for those of you that are on the West Coast. It's still morning. My name is, as you heard, is David Friedman. I'm the president of VividGro. I am less technically inclined than Nadia. I was listening in fascination, very good lead into who we are and what we do. We've got people on staff that are knowledgeable like she is, but I'm going to stay more high level and just kind of talk about the products that make all of these things work and what we do in the industry. So I've been in the industry for about 5 years specifically, and have invested in about 20 companies. I was tapped by VividGro, by Lighting Science, as they kind of accidentally discovered that their lights were applicable in horticulture. I wasn't super interested in stepping in and running a lighting company, and so the private equity firm that backs us, which is Pegasus, they're a $2 billion private equity firm, we sat down and I said, you know, I need a broader canvas if you want me to come in and do this. You can't win in the lighting game by selling lights. You need to be able to offer end-to-end solutions to the clients. And it wasn't very long before we kind of decided that we needed to move into the ag tech space. That tech ultimately is what is going to help growers change the industry, become more efficient, and be able to grow their crops at a more economical price. Now, we are crop agnostic. The products and services that we sell are for indoor growers of any type and any size. We completely re-engineered the lighting products. These are the family of products that you see on the screen. Grow Bar, and we also have a Flower Bar, are high efficacy, low cost, white light LEDs that our scientists and test subjects have identified as being the industry leaders in terms of competitive LED products relative to where HPS and the other lighting products that are traditionally used. Typically, other products that are as efficient as our products are about twice the price. We believe that the lighting game is a commodity game, and if people are going to be incentivized to use LED lights, you need to strip out a lot of the bells and whistles and focus in on the things that actually really grow the plants, and then help coordinate all of that with the rest of the environment in order to be effective. Grow Advisor is simply just an advisory group that does a lot of what Nadia mentioned, helping growers understand either on the front end or during the grow operations when they run into problems, what do your environmental conditions look like, where are you having problems, what are those problems, what are the solutions. GroNet is what I'm going to talk about here, mostly because it dovetails nicely with Nadia's presentation, and that's our automation control system that we have installed in indoor growing facilities. It's been around for about 20 years as a building automation control system. We acquired it and repurposed it for indoor horticulture. It is very stable and has a vast network of support to be able to manage the installations. I think probably the #1 complaint that we hear on the automation side of the business isn't the price or the product, it's whether or not there is a support structure behind it, because you're talking about enterprise level automation that is very critical to keeping your grow and your environment up and running. And if you can't rely on the support behind the system, then you've got problems when you've got problems. VividGro is actually a home grow app that we acquired as we intend to be vertical within the indoor grow facility. So VividGro is kind of an automated chatbot that's available in both the Android and the iPhone store that allows home growers to kind of automate their grow, has a little friendly bot that will walk you through the different cycles of grow. and tries to give us a top-down and a bottom-up approach to how to grow plants indoors. So with that, I'll move in and I'll try to move through this pretty quick. So hardware solutions, as I said, very basic. We have two lights. One light, all of our lights are white lights. They're mid-power, they're low cost. The Grow bar is pictured here. It's a series of 30-watt LED bars that can be stacked for any of the early stage growth. We typically don't recommend flowering, even though it's a 3000K product is available. It is available for full cycle and home grow situations where you want to grow under, say, a 4000K straight through. But typically in commercial facilities, these are replacing T5s and T8s and fluorescents. You get a stronger, healthier plant. You get it out of cycle anywhere between a week and 10 days sooner, and your cost obviously is reduced. You can replace 2 T5s with 1 grow bar, and you're also not drawing 600 watts of power by employing a light that can both flower and veg your plant that you're just dimming during the grow phase. So it creates more of that total opportunity cost solution that Nadia mentioned, where over time you can reduce your CapEx by speccing the right lights into the right area. As we move into the Grow Advisor, again, it's really just a matter of engaging a customer whatever the entry point is. Sometimes they come to us before they've broken ground or before they've even secured a facility and they need help soup to nuts. And sometimes they come to us because there's a mold issue or there's a humidity issue and they just need troubleshooting on an existing facility. Grow Advisor is a high-touch advisory firm that's focused on optimizing design and engineering of indoor agriculture facilities. We have architects, engineers, agronomists, people on staff that have years of experience in growing all types of plants, from cannabis to strawberries and everything in between. And we just help optimize all the aspects of the indoor farms and the greenhouses, hydroponic sites, et cetera. That includes equipment selection and other things. I think what's really important is in positioning your projects for long-term success and operational viability, there needs to be integration between all the components. So the HVAC, the automation, the CO2, everything needs to talk, and it needs to talk through a unified system. And being able to do that requires upfront consultation and preparation so that you can avoid costly repairs and retrofits without doing the upfront design and engineering. And also, let's face it, you know, we're not going to see $3,000 a pound cannabis for the foreseeable future. Some of you are out on the West Coast. You're already experiencing significantly reduced price per pound. So as growers, we need to be able to grow more efficiently and more cost effectively over a period of time. Ultimately, the ability to be able to do that is through automation, the collection of data, and the ability to proactively and correctively optimize your environment. So what do? Feasibility analysis, facility planning, design build services, agronomy services, equipment procurement, and automation controls. All of those things need to work in concert with each other to make sure that you're optimizing your grow facility. While probably 50–60% of the clients that we work with are retrofit, where we're coming in after the fact, that's just a function of the fact that the market is progressing at a very rapid pace. It's always nice to come in the beginning, but you know, the truth of the matter is that most of our troubleshooting gets done once a customer realizes they have a problem. We've got experience with facilities of all sizes, small farms all the way down to multi-property developments, at a plant biology level with all types of crop types. We have highly trained credential specialists, we have engineers, we have PhDs, we have chemists. They all work together in concert to optimize the grow facility regardless of the phase of growth that you're at. So you just see a list here of all the team that we have in-house. There are other people that we go out-of-house for to optimize our network when necessary, but we try to keep the expertise in-house so that we can work systematically. GroNet is the platform that I mentioned that we acquired. It's been in the marketplace for about 20 years. It's a very stable operating system. Essentially, it can integrate with any piece of equipment that has an input-output device. We kind of break the environment into 4 components that we call SMAA: sensing, monitoring, alerting, and then ultimately automating. The first 3 are critical and are fairly easy. And you know, we initially deploy hardware, sensors, photometric equipment, whatever it is, so that we can sense and we can monitor what's going on in the growing environment. We integrate that with our software on the back end so that we can track conditions. And then over time, we accumulate that data, and our data analysts work with you as growers to understand what's happening in your environment. You may think that your temperature and your humidity is staying consistent over a period of time, only to come to find out for various reasons, people leaving doors open or drafts that are coming underneath the door, like Nadia mentioned, that those things aren't consistent. And even more importantly, if you have a positive outcome and you have a crop that you'd like to be able to reproduce, you want to be able to measure what your environment looked like during that period of time. So your ability to create your own recipes and reproduce those recipes is really important when it comes to data collection, so that you can replicate the environment on an ongoing basis. And things such as outdoor ambient temperature have a significant impact on what's going on indoors. You can't just necessarily cool an environment down to an optimal level without knowing how that affects CO2 because of outdoor ambient temperatures and things like that. And it's different in a warehouse versus a greenhouse. So all of those things need to be constantly monitored, taken into consideration. Some of the things that we monitor on a fairly regular basis, of course, temperature, humidity, CO2. We've begun to monitor for pathogens, both from photooptometric as well as airborne pathogen sensors that allow us to preemptively try to detect what's going on in an environment. Crop loss is obviously the #1 issue for growers. You don't want to have a total loss in your crop, so early detection of pathogens is extremely helpful in being able to eradicate them without having damage to your crop or to your crop outcome. We can monitor pH. Nutrient specific is a little bit harder to monitor. We're working on some sensors for that, but there are things that you can do back end with the data to model whether or not specific nutrients may be lacking, light exposure, and then other things that are specified. Like I said, anything that has an input-output device in the piece of equipment can integrate with our back-end software. Obviously, we integrate with lighting, but we are hardware agnostic. So on the GroNet side, if you're using Gavita lights or another lighting manufacturer that has a controller or that can be wired into a controller, we tend to want to put the power supplies outside of the lights and into a separate room so that you can remove the heat from the grow environment. But we'll integrate with anything out there, whether it's the Fluence lighting system, our own lighting system. It's kind of the Apple model. It works with anything. It usually works better with our own stuff, but we've found some hardware companies out there who have really good quality hardware that integrates really well with our software. But we don't mind integrating with anybody out there. HVAC systems, obviously we heard a lot about that. Humidifiers, nutrients, and again, other things as specified. So, this is essentially a reiteration of Nadia's entire presentation. Automating your control systems for indoor agriculture essentially have the goal of maximizing your yield by assessing and optimizing your indoor growing conditions. At the end of the day, what's going on in your environment is going to dictate what happens to this living, breathing plant that you're harvesting, whether it be cannabis or whether it's strawberries or anything in between. Early detection of any kind of crop issues and well-being, enabling continuous improvement through the data collection. One of the things that's really, really important is I can't tell you how many billions of bytes of data exist in data warehouses all over the world that are not being utilized. It's one thing to collect data. It's another thing to analyze that data, make sense of that data, and use that data to optimize your environment. And that's really where our strength is at the end of the day. We're hardware agnostic. We're even somewhat software agnostic. We work and integrate with other monitoring systems, but the data modeling on the back end is really where our strength is. We have an end-to-end solution, and we have professionals that touch all areas of the growing environment, but the data modeling is where ultimately we believe that we're going to help our growers win the game. How does your data stack up against other data that's out there? All of the data is obviously anonymized. We don't share that data with anybody else, but we can establish trends, and we can look at what's working and what's not working. And then we can compare that to what's happened in your environment as you're able to harvest those crops, and you're able to determine what positive and what negative outcomes. There's a correlation between every outcome and the environmental conditions that went into it. So modeling that is really at the end of the day where we see the value that we're bringing to the industry. We try to focus, again, being hardware agnostic, easy installation, and hands-on 24/7 support. Again, the SMAA is really easy, sensing, monitoring, and alerting. The automation comes a little bit more difficultly. You need to be able to integrate with all of the pieces of equipment in your facility. You need to have people that are available 24/7. If you get an alarm that goes off, to be able to help troubleshoot that can work with your HVAC manufacturer. As I'm sure you guys are aware, there can be a lot of finger pointing when that stuff happens. At the end of the day, we don't really care. We just want to figure out how to get the problem solved, and that's what we bring to the table in terms of support, because the longer you're down in any one specific area of your environmental conditions, the more harm that's going to come to your plants. So in the end here, GroNet, it's a flexible, compatible system. This is a sample of a touchscreen box, fairly low cost to install in commercial facilities, and it's been driving results for more than 20 years on the building automation side. It's a very stable product with a nationwide, in fact, worldwide network of installers and support people, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. Try not to make them too scientific, though. The questions you ask Nadia will throw me for a loop. I could bring people in that could answer them, but try to stay high level if you don't mind.
Excellent. Thank you, David. We do have a couple questions rolling in here. First, how are you monitoring pathogens for early detection?
Yeah, so there's only two ways to monitor pathogens. There's photo-optometrics, so the installation of cameras, and those cameras can detect hotspots, and there's artificial intelligence that can detect early signs of pathogens before they're visible to the naked eye. In addition, as you guys know, when you're growing in a sea of green, you can't necessarily get your naked eye into the middle of that sea of green, and even when something is visible to the naked eye, you can't get close enough. So photo-optometrics are a big part of it, but there are also airborne pathogens and sensors that we're working on that can detect whether or not there are pathogens in the air, and then you know, next determining where those pathogens are coming from, and then ultimately eradicating those pathogens. So we are working with some hardware suppliers on both of those sides to be able to integrate those into the system, and over time we hope and expect to be able to bring an end-to-end solution around that stuff. But the only two ways you can do that, or three actually. One is, you know, human visibility, but from an automation standpoint, it's airborne pathogens and photo-optometrics with cameras and hotspots and artificial intelligence.
Awesome, thank you. What is the cost of automation?
You know, that depends on how big of a facility you're automating and, you know, how much automation you want. I mean, a basic system, temperature, humidity, you know, CO2 can be installed, including labor, for less than $5,000, and, you know, a couple $100 a month for monitoring and the beginnings, anyways, of, you know, data analysis. So it's a relatively inexpensive proposition to get started with, But, you know, we've automated facilities that cost upwards of $100,000 or $150,000 a year. Now, this assumes, by the way, that the equipment is a separate purchase, right? We're just tying into your HVAC system, you know, and your CO2 and you know, your dehumidifier. So that equipment all is separate. But the automation system that brings it all together can, you know, be relatively inexpensive. Now, if we're running sensors, you know, across 1 million square feet of warehouse space, your hardware costs start to get up there, and you know, they can rise as high as, you know, the facilities themselves can grow. But that's kind of a good rule of thumb.
Excellent, thank you. Next question, what are some of the things that cannot be automated?
I mean, look, you know, you can't really automate your harvesting. You can't automate your trimming. You know, there are certain elements of human activity. There are machines that can help with some of these things, but you're still going to need human beings in your grow environment, you know, to be able to visually identify things. You know, there are certain things that growers just know about plants that cameras aren't ever going to necessarily be able to tell you. So I really don't think that the Elon Musk, you know, fear of robots taking over indoor farming is something that's going to come into play, but I do think that a substantial portion of the indoor grow environment can be automated. You know, we've had crazy things like cameras that we've installed to determine seed propagation so that a human being doesn't have to go down the row and with a magnifying glass determine what percentage of the seeds propagated coming out of that propagation room. So things can be automated, but first you need a manual process in order to be able to automate it if it is feasible.
Okay. Last question for you for right now, and then we'll move on. Just a heads up to all the attendees, you can still ask David any questions you want, and we'll make sure to address them in the panel discussion at the end. But for now, the last question is, can this GroNet system work in an outdoor greenhouse?
In an outdoor greenhouse? So, I mean, everybody uses language differently. Anything that's under a roof we consider to be indoors. So theoretically, from our perspective, a greenhouse is indoors. And the answer is yeah, you can monitor anything in a controlled environment, and you can control anything within that environment. And so to the extent that it's enclosed, yes, if you've got open exposure to the elements, it can work. You can sense and you can monitor and you can alert, but you really can't automate if you've got outside elements that are coming into the facility. So assuming that you're under a fully enclosed glass roof and facility, it operates the same way as it does in a full indoor facility without any, you know, exposure to the open elements.